You've been taught to see with your eyes, but never to see with your being. The eye of God is not a mystical fantasy. It is the ancient name for a higher faculty of perception buried deep within your consciousness. It allows you to perceive not only the surface of life, but the hidden energy shaping it. Every human carries this divine lens within them, though most remain unaware of it. It is the part of you that senses meaning where logic finds none, that feels presence in silence, and that dreams in vivid light while your eyes are closed. You were born with it fully open. Over time, the noise of the world made you forget. From the moment you entered this world, you began to be conditioned to trust only the visible. You were taught to measure reality through what can be touched, counted, or proven, and in doing so, you turned away from the invisible current that animates it all. Yet even in that forgetfulness, glimpses have reached you. The déjà vu that made your spine tingle, the instinct that saved you from a mistake, the chill that came before an unseen truth. These were fragments of the eye trying to awaken. You have already touched the unseen many times without realizing it. What you call coincidence is often evidence that you are brushing against divine sight. To unlock this inner eye is not to grow something new, but to remove what blocks it. Think of it like sunlight behind a thick curtain. The light has always been shining, but the fabric of fear, doubt, and distraction has veiled it. Every belief that tells you only what's visible is real strengthens the curtain. Every moment of stillness, trust, and expanded awareness pulls it open. You do not need external rituals or rare symbols. You need remembrance. The eye of God awakens through direct experience, through becoming aware of awareness itself. When you realize that consciousness is not confined to your body, a doorway begins to form. The first step is unlearning. Most people try to force awakening, but divine vision cannot be forced. It responds to purity, not pressure. You unlock the eye of God by quieting the mind long enough for it to remember its own depth. Imagine your awareness as still water. When thought ripples across its surface, reflections distort. But when the water becomes calm, it mirrors the heavens perfectly. In that stillness, perception expands beyond physical limits, and what was invisible begins to reveal its structure. The unseen is not far away, it is simply subtle. You have been too loud to hear it, too busy to feel it. Silence is the first act of seeing. What you are seeking has been watching through your eyes all along. The eye of God is not something you open, it is something you become aware of. It is the timeless consciousness witnessing your life from within. Once recognized, it begins to illuminate everything it touches. You start to see meaning in chaos, order in randomness, life in every form of death. The veil does not disappear all at once. It thins slowly, like dawn rising after centuries of night. And when it finally breaks, you realize that what you called invisible was never hidden. It was your own divine sight waiting for you to remember how to look. Once the remembrance begins, the next question arises: how does one sustain it? The eye of God does not open through belief alone. It unfolds through alignment. You cannot see beyond the invisible with a scattered mind or an unsteady spirit. Just as a lens must be polished to reflect light clearly, consciousness must be refined to perceive the divine. The ancients spoke of three sacred forces that, when balanced, awaken higher sight: silence, breath, and focus. These are not techniques but living gateways, harmonizing the physical, mental, and spiritual dimensions of your being. Together, they form the triad upon which divine perception stands. Silence is the foundation. In a world overflowing with noise, silence is not merely quiet. It is a frequency, a bridge to the infinite. It exists between every thought, waiting to be entered. When you still the mind long enough, the constant chatter that keeps you locked in surface reality begins to dissolve. In that gap, something vast and luminous reveals itself, the field through which the eye of God perceives. This is why mystics and prophets sought solitude, not to escape the world, but to hear the original sound beneath it. The silence you cultivate is the same silence through which divine vision speaks. The more you dwell in it, the clearer the unseen becomes. Then comes breath, the sacred current connecting body and spirit. Every inhale draws the invisible into form. Every exhale returns it to the eternal. Breath is how the unseen world enters you continuously, yet most breathe unconsciously, unaware that each breath is a message from the divine. When you begin to breathe consciously, with awareness and intention, you start synchronizing your rhythm with the rhythm of creation. The eye of God awakens through this harmony. Ancient initiates called breath the key to the gates of perception, for it anchors awareness in the present moment where all realities converge. The final pillar is directed focus. In the same way that a scattered beam of light cannot ignite a flame, a scattered mind cannot pierce the veil. Your attention is divine currency. Where you spend it, creation responds. Focused awareness is not strain, it is relaxed precision, a merging of observer and observed. When silence steadies the mind and breath harmonizes the body, focus becomes effortless. The eye of God opens naturally in this balance, revealing that perception is not about looking harder, but seeing deeper. Through these three pillars, you no longer search for the invisible. It begins to reveal itself through you. When silence, breath, and focus begin to merge, awareness starts to expand beyond the boundaries of ordinary thought. You may notice brief flashes, moments when time pauses and something deeper stirs behind the surface of perception. This is where the journey shifts inward, into what mystics called the blind spot of consciousness. It is the unseen gap between thoughts, a doorway that opens for a fraction of a second each time the mind becomes still. Most pass through it every night before sleep, but never recognize it. Yet within that fleeting silence lies the entrance to the eye of God. To unlock divine sight, you must learn to find and dwell within this invisible space consciously. The blind spot is not darkness, it is pure awareness before the mind interprets it. Think of your consciousness as a flowing river of thoughts. The blind spot is the still whirlpool at its center, where the current pauses. You cannot reach it through effort, because effort itself creates ripples. The more you chase it, the further it retreats. Instead, you enter by relaxing into observation, watching your thoughts drift by without attachment, until the movement slows and the gap becomes visible. In that gap, a new kind of perception emerges, one that doesn't rely on the senses. It's as if your awareness begins to see itself, revealing the invisible framework holding all visible things. As your ability to rest in this silent space deepens, subtle changes begin to unfold. You start perceiving patterns behind events, energies behind emotions, meanings behind coincidences. It's not imagination, it's recognition. The eye of God perceives reality from within, not from without. So the first visions are not of external light, but of internal revelation. In this state, the boundaries between self and world soften. You no longer observe reality as something separate. You feel it as an extension of your own consciousness. That's the moment divine vision starts to awaken. When you realize you were never seeing the world, you were seeing through it. Many resist this space because it feels unfamiliar, too still, too vast, too undefinable. But what seems like emptiness is actually fullness beyond measure. It is the womb of all creation, where unseen reality breathes itself into being. To dwell here without fear is to remember your true nature as consciousness itself. When you rest in that awareness long enough, the invisible becomes not something you look for, but something you look from. That is the essence of unlocking the eye of God, shifting from being a seeker of light to becoming the light that sees. When the blind spot of consciousness begins to open and the silence deepens, the unseen draws closer. Yet before the eye of God fully awakens, every seeker encounters resistance. These moments are not failures, they are initiations. Ancient teachings called them the guardians of the threshold, energies that test whether your consciousness is stable enough to hold divine perception. They appear in the form of emotions, thoughts, and doubts that rise from within, not to stop you, but to refine you. You are standing at the doorway between two worlds, the known and the infinite. To see beyond the invisible, you must first become transparent to it. The first guardian to appear is doubt. It whispers from the shadows of the mind, questioning everything, your experiences, your worthiness, even the path itself. But doubt is not an enemy, it is a mirror. It asks you to clarify what is real and what is illusion. When faced with it, do not fight it. Observe it through stillness, and it will transform into discernment. You begin to see how belief shapes perception, and how your inner state molds the world around you. Once you learn to hold your awareness steady in the presence of doubt, the veil thins even further, and your trust in the unseen strengthens. Next comes fear, the deep primal fear of losing your familiar sense of self. The awakening of divine sight dissolves the boundaries between you and the universe, and the small self trembles at the thought of such vastness. Fear arises not because danger exists, but because the ego senses its own impermanence. Yet fear, when met with awareness, becomes reverence. It teaches humility in the face of infinity. To cross this threshold, you must not flee from fear, but breathe through it. Like walking into cold water, discomfort fades once you surrender. Then, the energy that once constricted you transforms into power, the very current that carries you deeper into divine perception. As you pass these tests, a new challenge emerges: impatience. The human mind wants results, signs, proofs. But the eye of God opens in rhythm, not haste. Impatience reveals your attachment to control, the subtle belief that awakening can be forced. True vision ripens in stillness, like fruit in the sun. You learn to wait without waiting, to act without forcing, to allow awareness to bloom on its own. In that patience, time begins to dissolve, and you realize the divine was never absent. It was simply waiting for you to match its pace. This is where the click often happens, the moment perception shifts from seeing through eyes to seeing through essence. When the threshold is crossed, your perception expands in waves. Colors sharpen, coincidences align, intuition heightens. You begin to live inside a living tapestry of synchronicity, where every event feels charged with meaning. The eye of God does not just reveal hidden realities, it reveals the intelligence behind them. You sense life communicating through symbols, sensations, and impulses. Yet this new sight demands balance. Without grounding, even divine insight can become disorienting. That is why the ancients taught integration, the art of walking between worlds without losing your center. It means living as both witness and participant, letting the invisible inform the visible, while remaining anchored in awareness. Integration is where mastery begins. You carry divine sight into daily life, not as a performance, but as presence. You become the bridge between heaven and earth, seeing the sacred in the ordinary, the infinite in the mundane. Keeping a journal, observing synchronicities, listening to intuition, these are not rituals, but ways of training perception to remain open. The more you live from this awareness, the more naturally the unseen flows through you. Eventually, the line between vision and reality dissolves. You no longer look for the invisible, you live from it. To unlock the eye of God is not to gain a new sense, but to awaken the ancient one that never closed, only waited for you to remember that you were never blind. In conclusion, every moment has led you here, to remember what you've never lost. The eye of God is not given to you. It awakens when you stop denying what you already are. You were never meant to stumble blindly through existence. You were meant to see through illusion, to perceive the invisible architecture of creation, moving beneath all things. So breathe, become still, focus your attention like a flame, silence the noise, and listen to the pulse of eternity that beats within you. The veil will lift, not with effort, but with remembrance. Once you see with the eye of God, you will understand. Nothing was ever hidden. Reality was only waiting for you to open your true eyes.